I just want you to engage in a conversation with me. I've been doing this for a lot less time than I was a campaign operative. And if I were your campaign operative, I'd be working with you round the clock on how to deal with the Bain vulnerability. You're not running in a Republican primary. You're running in a Democratic primary. Your party has moved to the left. How do you explain feeling at home at Bain?
Well, first of all, I love that the party has moved to the left. I love that we are the party of the woke. I believe that we also have to be the party of the still waking. And I have always conducted my personal life and my business life and my life as a civil rights lawyer, my life as an advocate, my wife as a mediator and as a governor that way. And why? It's not because I'm trying to smooth over issues. I'm interested in getting at root causes. This state here in Massachusetts was at 98% insurance coverage before the ACA went into effect. And I'm still not sure there's another state that can get there. Now, how do we do that? It was about bringing together this broad coalition of advocates and policymakers and healthcare experts and advocates for poor people and the marginalized and so many others to invent the reform and then sticking together to do refinements on the strength of what we've learned. That's how you get change that lasts. And at the same time, we're changing systems. We need to be growing an economy out to the middle and marginalized, not just up to the well-connected. So, yes, I work at the place that was demonized in the 2012 presidential election. And
by
I
your
remember
party,
it because
by your side.
Because I'm about to tell you, you may remember I was co-chair of that campaign. And I didn't buy into it then, and I still don't. There is a place for private equity in the private economy. There is a place for business in our lives. But it is also true that capitalism generally has a lot to answer for. That is so. And we need to be able to confront that. And that's exactly the work I've been doing at Bain Capital. But I've done that same work in other business settings before.
Deval Patrick is former governor of Massachusetts and has been talked about as a possible contender for the Democratic nomination for the presidency in 2020. So much so, in fact, that he was one of the people, one of the politicians, I should say, who met with former President Barack Obama earlier this year about that possibility. But apparently no more. He is prepared to announce that he will not be running. Patrick informed staff and advisors of his decision Tuesday, the sources say, with an announcement to come as soon as this week. So, why is that? Why is he not running? Well, we don't know for sure. Obviously, we can't get into his head, and it probably will never be confirmed. But just a day ago, there was some pretty amazing reporting of his past and his connection to a Republican involved in some of the worst patterned foreclosures in recent American history. So let's start stepping back through history. When GOP megadonor Roland Arnold came up for the ambassadorship for the Netherlands, Patrick wrote to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to heap praise on him, even though he's a Republican donor. The billionaire was a good man, Patrick said, and his company AmeriQuest was a good company. Arnold had, quote, really stepped forward after a settlement in the 1990s. Quote, he used the experience to make a better company and would make a fine ambassador. So who is this guy? What is this company? What is this all about? Patrick and Arnold actually got to know each other in 1996 when Patrick helmed the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. Arnold was running Long Beach Mortgage Company, which the DOJ was investigating for racial discrimination in the subprime lending market. Subprime lending, not as big of a topic of conversation back then. It'll be huge in about a decade after that. The DOJ and Long Beach eventually reached a $4 million settlement for that racial discrimination. So he's obviously involved in that case. After that, Arnold developed his mortgage operation into AmeriQuest, the company referenced in the first graphic, which became the world's largest subprime lender during the housing bubble. So what did they go on to do? Well, AmeriQuest's business model used high-pressure sales techniques to push homeowners with existing mortgages into new loans with sky-high interest rates. If the family couldn't pay, investors who bought the loans would acquire the house through foreclosure. When home prices were soaring during the housing bubble, it was a tremendously profitable strategy, turning AmeriQuest into a very successful company and Arnold into a billionaire. So one of the perfect examples of what led to the financial collapse was a guy at a company that Patrick Deval was involved in kind of giving him a slap on the wrist back during some other illegal behavior and then pushing for him politically even after he had transitioned into this new far worse form of mortgage providing.
Well, it's actually slightly worse than that. So they oftentimes targeted minorities and minority communities, and Deval Patrick, who's African American, helped cover up for them. And that's just, I feel uncomfortable saying it, but it's true. And New York Times business columnist Joe Nocera called AmeriQuest, quote, the worst bottom feeder of them all.
All right, now that you've seen that TYT clip, I'm going to try to make this not very long. Deval Patrick, the former governor of Massachusetts, got into the race. Well, when I put this up, it'll be Friday, but today is when it happened. And he did an interview on CBS where he opposed single payer, you know, just the usual milquetoast, centrist Democrat stuff. But I played that clip, which is from December of last year, so 11 months ago, because I wanted to highlight the fact that I thought we were done with Mr. Patrick. I thought his corruption had been exposed thoroughly, and that, you know, we would never have to hear about him, at least in the near, certainly during this election cycle. Now, AmeriQuest is, just to repeat what was said there, a group that used a business model of having high-pressure sales techniques to push homeowners with existing mortgages into new loans with sky-high interest rates. And when the family couldn't pay, the investors who bought the loans would acquire the house through foreclosure. Now, you heard Cenk mention, and because they didn't get to this part in the article, how this was oftentimes used toward people who were of minority. And Patrick, who is black, was placed in a position to go, oh no, they're not doing anything wrong. They're okay. So this is what people, when they, oftentimes you hear liberals and they'll say that when you vote for the Republicans, you vote against your own interest. When you vote for someone like this who is a Democrat, you vote against your own interest as well. And it's not because they don't, you know, speak the way I like. We have people running in this primary who have, in some cases, decades of corruption. You heard the part about him being under the Department of Justice during the Clinton years, and this little small $4 million settlement, and how after that he was able to mysteriously wind up with Arno. Oh, it's such a coincidence. But that's why I said U.S. politics is, because people don't pay attention to it to any large extent, and a lot of the individuals who are either representatives or senators or officials working in some capacity in these departments, they're able to get away with doing disgusting things to regular people for decades. Patrick should be in prison, not running for president, and he shouldn't be there because, again, he has an opposing ideology. We're talking about a person who exemplified corruption, and, you know, through the fact that we have such a laziness when it comes to our collective wisdom on who these people are, was able to still become governor in a relatively large state twice, and now is being taken seriously as a presidential candidate. Now, his chances of winning again are limited to getting in the race very late, and really one could make the argument that you shouldn't even bother addressing him, or, you know, taking some part of a TYT video and putting it in here. But I just felt the need to reiterate the fact that this is a corrupt corporate piece of trash that, you know, was backed by Obama, who has no ideology. Remember, this was the first African American president enthusiastically endorsed the candidacy, you know, behind the closed scenes, of a fellow black person who assisted a group that targeted the homes and living conditions of people of their ethnicity and other minorities. That's why I said it's just identity politics. They're looking at the fact that Harris and Booker are collectively polling at minus 10% and deciding that, you know, we need one more person in here who might be able to excite someone, not because they're, you know, any better in terms of their positions, no, because they're of this ethnic group that we think the members of are so stupid they'll vote for anyone who happens to look like them. It doesn't work that way anymore. It might have in 2008, but not at this point.